It's member-supported Hawaii Public Radio, all things considered, and I'm Dave Lawrence. Cage the Elephant are back with a new album and tour, and while no area dates have been announced so far, the Kentucky band played Honolulu, you may remember, in February 2012. That's when singer Matt Shultz spoke with us after the show. He joins us again, calling in to speak with All Things Considered during a break in the tour for their new album, Mellophobia.
It becomes more and more apparent to me how much external influences and internal influences play a role on the creative process, and sometimes even more internal than external, as far as like just feeling the need to project these premeditated images of self. Sometimes we have ulterior motives. You want to be perceived as intellectual or artistic or poetic or, God forbid, genius, and these are elitist titles that were made to separate the few from the many, which that's the kind of thing that destroys everything that's great about creative expression. And so in this record, it was really, and in every record, it feels like we try to make strides against strategy-based writing or fear-based writing and try to just make it a genuine expression. Perhaps sometimes we influence ourselves in ways we don't like. Yeah, maybe you get really good at portraying this particular image and maybe it feels right, but what if the thing that feels right is wrong?
It's a lot of pressure, I can imagine, to have a consistency in the sound, because once you sort of establish something, it becomes a lot bigger than 4 or 5 guys.
I've never had any problem with writing songs that communicated to people because I feel like that's part of the purpose of music, and I personally do love a great catchy song. Yeah, I always have. And as long as I feel like I'm trying to communicate to people, then hopefully it translates. I hope I never get in a place where I'm just like self-serving with the music, and not to get down on anyone who uses music in that manner, but just for me, I've always felt a desire to reach people, but there are people who try to influence you and try to get you to write in certain directions.
The catchiness is undeniable. There's a little move you do aesthetically. I guess I call it the Cage the Elephant breakdown, build up to climax thing in the middle of the tune, where you break it all down and minus a guitar solo, you kind of bring it back up to this climax. Is that the kind of thing that you come up with, or where does that come from?
That's a good question. A lot of that stuff happens naturally, and I suppose there's probably a reason for it. Without trying to get too philosophical here, we try to make our songs kind of emulate life. In life, there's times where you're feeling great, there's times where you're feeling like you're crawling on your stomach, and there's times where you're exploding, and there's this rise and fall, and so maybe that's what we're catching. I don't know.
I love your authenticity. I wonder sometimes the wear and tear of having to go out there and do that, the routine, if you will, of the touring musician lifestyle, and the commercial, almost narcissistic nature of the social media way it needs to be promoted these days.
You just don't want things that are so real to be plasticized and turned into some kind of marketing scheme, and everyone's trying to be heard in some way or another. So I can't say that my white garments have gone unstained or anything like that. You know, it's like I've had some of the most incredible experiences at funerals. And I know that sounds morbid, but those are times where all these safeguards that we build up in life, they fall away. You're left so vulnerable. There's nothing you can do about it. It's such a real experience. It's very uncomfortable, but it's very real. When I'm writing, I hope to maintain that kind of intimacy and that kind of realness.
Too personal to share one of those funeral stories with us?
No, it's fine. All my grandparents, except for I have one grandmother that's still living, have passed away, and we all experienced those things. But with my grandfather in particular, and my grandmother, I was working construction, and I got a phone call. It came unexpectedly. I remember I was just thinking that week, I was like, gosh, I really got to go see Grandpa. And he passed away before I got a chance to, and it was just heartbreaking. But there's a certain amount of callousness that we human beings do in our everyday life as protections. And in a moment like that, it's kind of like in the same place I imagine you could be at childbirth or any kind of traumatic experience that just has tons of gravity.
That's a great way of putting it. Matt Shultz, Cage the Elephant. New record is Mellophobia. And Matt, I really appreciate your time. I hope this wasn't a hassle doing this today.
It wasn't a hassle at all. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Aloha, this is Matt Shultz from Cage the Elephant, and you're tuned to All Things Considered with Dave Lawrence on statewide, member-supported Hawaii Public Radio.